Why is it so incredibly difficult to let go of someone who has left a deep mark of pain on your heart? Are these invisible threads, woven by the heart, the mind, or something far more hidden and powerful, connecting us to the past? Perhaps you've made tremendous efforts to move forward, filling every void with new, vibrant experiences, convincing yourself that old hurts and disappointments have lost all meaning. Yet despite all these attempts, that memory invariably remains like a persistent, elusive shadow that stubbornly refuses to dissolve into oblivion. Have you ever wondered why this happens, and what the true nature of this unbreakable bond is? Today we will delve deeply into this question to find an answer that lies far beyond superficial explanations. We will journey through the hidden corners of the human mind and soul to truly understand why certain individuals and experiences remain indelibly imprinted in our inner world despite our most desperate attempts to free ourselves from their influence. To do this, we must bravely look beyond the visible to where the true mechanisms of human memory and emotions lie. Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers in the history of psychology, dedicated his life to tirelessly deciphering the complex mysteries of the human unconscious. His extensive works left behind invaluable, profound insights into why we cling so tenaciously to certain relationships and why emotional wounds, seemingly, can remain unhealed for many years despite everything. This text is intended not only for those who desperately long to forget the past and its painful echoes, but also for everyone who genuinely seeks healing, a deeper understanding of themselves and their inner processes, and a complete return of control over their emotions and state of mind. Imagine someone lying in bed, the lights out and complete silence all around. The outside world seems peaceful, but their own mind refuses to settle. Memories of past relationships, moments of laughter and depths of pain, unspoken words and unresolved issues suddenly flood in as if all these events happened just yesterday. Perhaps this person asks themselves, why couldn't things have been different? What could I have done to avoid such intense pain? Why did I allow someone to gain such significant power over me? Such a cycle of thoughts is far from accidental. It is a direct reflection of something much deeper, hidden within the individual, something unresolved that urgently demands understanding and processing. And in this experience, the person is not alone. Many people throughout their lives go through relationships that leave deep emotional scars, sometimes invisible to others, but palpable to the soul. And despite the widespread societal belief that time can heal all wounds, the true picture is far more complex and multifaceted. The mere passage of time cannot heal what a person carries deep within themselves. A wound left unattended does not disappear without a trace. It hides beneath the surface of consciousness, continuing to subtly shape emotions and influence decisions in ways the individual may not even realize. The teachings of the eminent psychologist Carl Gustav Jung remind humanity of a crucial and profound truth. Everything that is not consciously processed and understood inevitably settles in the depths of the unconscious. It does not disappear without a trace. On the contrary, it finds refuge in what Jung himself called the shadow, influencing a person's thoughts, emotions, and behavioral reactions from beneath the surface of their awareness. The unconscious mind, like a bottomless vault, never forgets anything. Everything an individual has not dared to face, everything that has not been fully processed and integrated, is carefully stored in this vast and hidden space within the human psyche. And this is not just passive storage. Accumulated elements find sophisticated ways to manifest in daily life, often without the individual's slightest awareness. It is for this reason that even when a person consciously strives to forget the image of someone who once held such an important place in their life, something within them stubbornly resists this urge. The emotional connection, shared experiences, and even the pain experienced in those relationships become not just memories, but a powerful echo that continues to resonate deep within the human soul, preventing complete liberation from the past. At the core of Jungian psychology, which deeply explores the human psyche, lies a fundamental concept crucial for understanding why individuals find it so difficult to let go of the past, the shadow self. This shadow represents an integral part of the human unconscious, containing the full spectrum of experiences, emotional states, and desires that have been consciously suppressed or unconsciously ignored. It is formed from everything that the subject perceives as excessively painful, extremely inconvenient, or impossibly difficult to confront directly. When a person experiences traumatic relationships, especially those that leave a deep mark in the form of feelings of abandonment, betrayal, or worthlessness, these heavy emotions are often not fully processed. Instead, they are deeply buried in their shadow. However, the shadow does not remain silent. On the contrary, it exerts a subtle but extraordinarily powerful influence on the personality. This manifests through intrusive, constantly recurring memories, persistent thoughts, and even through stable behavioral patterns that inevitably keep a person in closed cycles of pain and suffering. It is for this reason that some people find themselves repeatedly involved in similar, destructive and toxic relationships. Such a turn of events is not a mere coincidence. It is the unconscious mind, seeking to resolve unresolved inner conflicts, recreating old wounds, relentlessly pushing the individual into situations that mirror what has not yet been fully healed. According to Carl Jung, the shadow represents that hidden aspect of the human being that an individual often prefers to ignore or suppress. It includes all aspects of personality that are perceived as unacceptable, uncomfortable, or unworthy. Deep fears, inner insecurities, unfulfilled aspirations, and unhealed emotional wounds. In essence, these are the fragments of our self that are repressed into the unconscious because their awareness seems too painful or overwhelmingly difficult to confront directly. However, the shadow does not disappear without a trace. On the contrary, it manifests itself in interpersonal interactions, especially vividly in relationships characterized by high intensity, emotional richness, or conflict. Jung hypothesized that what a person rejects within themselves is often projected onto others. In other words, when someone experiences deep suffering caused by another person, it is not always solely due to their actions or words. More often, the true pain stems from what that other person inadvertently exposed within the suffering individual, those aspects of personality that had not yet been recognized by them. One might imagine, for example, that the person who caused pain embodied something that the individual themselves fears within. Perhaps their actions triggered a deeply rooted fear of abandonment, revealing a desperate need for connection that the person had long refused to acknowledge. Or perhaps their rejection did not merely wound in the present moment, but rather reopened an old emotional scar that was acquired in childhood but never fully healed. The shadow functions like a mirror, reflecting to us those aspects of our psyche that have been buried in the depths of the subconscious. When someone inadvertently triggers this reflection, the intensity of the experience can be overwhelming. This feeling is akin to being forced to confront a version of oneself that one would have preferred never to see. This is why the process of freeing oneself from pain becomes so difficult. The suffering is not exclusively tied to the other individual. It is inextricably linked to what that person revealed within us. Thus, the question arises for each person: what, in their opinion, might these relationships have revealed about themselves? What part of their personality have they not yet accepted? Reflecting on these questions is not simple, but it represents the first, crucial step toward genuine healing. Jung, as is well known, stated, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This means that as long as a person avoids confronting the emotions, wounds, and projections arising from their relationships, they will remain trapped in the same repeating cycles. Nevertheless, there is hope, for once an individual brings their shadows into the light of consciousness, they not only gain the opportunity to free themselves from pain, but also to extract a valuable lesson from it. The situation described leads to an even deeper understanding. Why does a person seem to repeat the same scenarios in their relationships, especially those that bring pain again and again? Carl Gustav Jung offers a fascinating answer to this question, asserting that the human psyche is shaped by universal archetypes. These archetypes are innate, universal patterns that reside in the collective unconscious. They function as invisible yet powerful guides, significantly influencing human emotions, thoughts, and, most importantly, how people build their interpersonal connections. In the context of unhealthy or toxic relationships, certain archetypes tend to manifest in a very predictable way. One of the most common is the archetype of the rescuer. This is a person who feels an irresistible need to protect, fix, or save others. At first glance, such a role might seem noble or completely selfless, but beneath its surface often lies deep insecurity. This need to feel needed, indispensable, serves as a way of validating one's own existence and significance. At the opposite pole of this complex dynamic is the archetype of the victim, someone who identifies with suffering and a sense of helplessness, genuinely believing that their well-being and happiness depend entirely on the actions and attention of others. This archetype naturally attracts the rescuer, leading to the formation of relationships based on mutual, often destructive dependence. Over time, however, this dynamic becomes unstable and destructive. Then, lurking in the shadows, the archetype of the villain emerges. This figure arises when unhealed inner wounds manifest through aggression, attempts at control, or manipulation. Often, those who take on the role of the villain were themselves deeply traumatized in the past, and they unconsciously perpetuate cycles of pain as a form of self-protection. It is important to note that these archetypes do not exist in isolation. They actively interact, feed each other, and create complex, often destructive emotional patterns. For example, a person identifying as a rescuer might initially feel deep satisfaction helping someone they perceive as a victim, but over time they may begin to feel exhausted, unappreciated, or even deceived. This growing dissatisfaction can ultimately transform them into the villain in the victim's eyes, leading to an endless cycle of mutual accusations, resentments, and deep disappointments. This destructive cycle is much more common in human relationships than many realize. However, the main question is why people fall into these repetitive and painful patterns again and again. Jung explained that on a conscious level, a person is subconsciously attracted to those who reflect their deepest inner wounds or patterns inherited from family history. If, for example, an individual experienced rejection in childhood, they may find themselves consistently attracted to emotionally distant or unavailable people. This is not a random coincidence, rather, it is a kind of attempt by the psyche to recreate the scenario where the original trauma occurred with a secret hope for its ultimate resolution. One can imagine it this way: a person who grew up feeling they constantly had to earn their parents' love might well seek a romantic partner who displays coldness or indifference, genuinely believing that if they can finally win their affection, they will heal this old, deeply lodged wound. But instead of finding the longed-for solace, they often fall into an endless cycle of rejection and despair, thereby only intensifying the very pain they so desperately seek to escape. A key aspect of overcoming ingrained behavioral patterns lies in understanding the unconscious. Jung's famous quote states, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This profound statement indicates that if an individual is unaware of the deep forces shaping their interpersonal connections, they are doomed to repeatedly reproduce the same painful scenarios, perceiving them as an inevitable destiny rather than a choice that can be changed. One of the most effective ways to achieve freedom is to identify the archetypes influencing one's relationships. Archetypes are universal, deeply rooted patterns of behavior and emotional reactions operating within the human psyche. Does one play the role of the rescuer, constantly striving to fix and rescue others, or perhaps they see themselves as the victim, continuously feeling helpless in relationships? Maybe the individual even identifies with the villain, pushing people away before they can cause harm. It is worth taking time for deep self-reflection. What roles have been unconsciously played in past connections? What patterns seem to repeat with striking regularity? The answers to these questions mark the first step toward unraveling the hidden forces shaping one's life path. By bringing these patterns into the light of awareness, a person begins the process of breaking the vicious cycle, because ultimately, understanding one's own archetypes not only frees one from toxic relationships, but also opens the way to building healthier, more authentic, and deeply satisfying connections. Forgiveness is not just a matter of time, it represents a profound inner metamorphosis. Often, people tend to believe that simply waiting will dissolve the pain, but Carl Jung teaches that true healing requires actively confronting one's own shadow. The shadow, according to his teachings, is a hidden area of the psyche that contains the emotions, fears, and unhealed wounds that an individual seeks to avoid. But how does this confrontation occur? How is it truly possible to heal from the burden of painful relationships? Below is a step-by-step process designed to free oneself from the weight of past connections and transform suffering into a powerful tool for personal growth. The first and most crucial step in this process is to recognize the emotions that a specific person still evokes. It is recommended to take time for deep reflection. What feelings arise when you think of them? This could be burning anger, deep sadness, a crushing sense of guilt, or perhaps a bewildering mix of various emotional states. Instead of suppressing these inner responses, you must allow yourself to fully acknowledge and accept them. One of the most effective ways to do this is to keep a journal or spend time in a quiet, secluded place for focused introspection. Ask yourself key questions. Where does this feeling truly come from? What part of my past experience, my inner insecurities, or my unfulfilled expectations is reflected here? For example, if anger is felt, it may be directed not only at the other person, but also at oneself for allowing certain events to happen. If guilt dominates, its roots may go deep into the fear of not being good enough. These emotions are not random, they serve as windows into one's own shadow. Observing them without judgment is a fundamental step toward weakening their hold on consciousness. An exceptionally powerful exercise is to visualize this person standing before you, not as an adversary, but as a mirror reflection. Ask yourself, what do these relationships reveal within me? What do I need to accept or heal within myself to truly free myself from this pain? Initially, this process may seem extremely uncomfortable, even agonizing, but it carries profound, transformative potential. Jung asserted that every painful experience contains the opportunity to teach us something vitally important about ourselves. Relationships that leave the most significant mark, whether through deep attachment or through suffering, provide unique chances to identify hidden behavioral patterns that need changing and old wounds ready for healing. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you need to change your perspective and ask, "What can I learn from this?" For example, if a relationship made an individual feel invisible or unappreciated, it might be a signal to work on self-esteem and establish clearer personal boundaries. If it led to a feeling of emotional dependence, it could become an opportunity to develop one's autonomy and strengthen one's sense of self. Reframing pain as a valuable lesson empowers. It shifts the individual from the position of a victim of circumstances to the active creator of their own healing. Ultimately, true letting go does not mean completely erasing the past, but represents a process of reconnecting with one's own personality in such a way that past events lose their pervasive influence over the person. The eminent thinker Carl Jung called this profound process individuation, a complex but extremely important trajectory towards emotional clarity and the full integration of all facets of the human psyche. This path of self-discovery invariably requires the individual to accept both their light sides and their shadow, that is, to acknowledge every, even the most hidden, corner of their own being. By immersing oneself in this process, a person develops a deeper and more stable connection with their true self, that whole and unadorned version of themselves that lies beneath numerous layers of social conventions and inner fears. Individuation undoubtedly requires unwavering commitment and genuine courage. It is not an instant transformation, but rather a methodical, gradual unveiling of self-awareness. In this great journey, every, even the most modest, step holds immense significance. One can begin this path by systematically setting aside time for deep self-reflection, passionately exploring one's true interests, and purposefully developing those aspects of one's life that may have remained neglected until now. It is important to intentionally engage in activities that truly nourish the soul, be it solitary meditation, creative painting, meaningful writing, or simply a harmonious reconnection with pristine nature. Such practices are not merely a source of temporary relief or fleeting pleasure. They serve as a catalyst for the deepest process of inner healing and transformation. By immersing oneself in them, one inevitably comes to a fateful realization. True peace and harmony do not stem from external approvals or favorable circumstances. They always originate and emanate from within. As Jung profoundly and wisely stated, he who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens. This is the pivotal moment of awakening for the individual. By turning their gaze inward, they do not merely find answers to pressing questions. They rediscover their own essence, reconnect with that inexhaustible inner strength that has always resided within them, patiently awaiting recognition. Thus, a crucial question arises for each person. What are they willing to do to embark on this transformative journey to their true self? For true letting go is by no means the end, it is merely the starting point. It marks the beginning of a path to a richer, more authentic life, where the focus is on oneself, not on the painful echoes of the past. Reframing the past does not mean changing what actually happened. On the contrary, it means transforming the way those events are interpreted. The power that traumatic experiences hold over a person often lies not in the circumstances themselves, but in the narrative built around them. Stories that replay in the mind, centered on pain, guilt, or deep disappointment, can become true emotional prisons, holding an individual in suffering long after the events themselves have passed. However, the truth is that a person is not their past. They are not reduced to the sum of their wounds. Every person has an inner strength that allows them to reframe their own story, extract valuable wisdom from experienced difficulties, and regain control over their personal narrative. The moment a person decides to reinterpret their past through the lens of inner strength rather than the role of a victim, they reclaim the reins. Thus, they become the true architect of their own transformation. The choice before each person is whether to continue being defined by the echoes of yesterday or to embark on the path of self-healing. The renowned thinker Carl Jung urged a different approach: to transform one's personal narrative into a reliable bridge leading to growth and deep self-knowledge. Imagine your past as a vast book of your life. For many years you may have reread only one chapter, marked by deep wounds, regrets, or bitter reproaches. However, it is important to realize that this particular chapter is by no means your entire story. It represents only one of the many parts of the book that you continue to write. What would happen if you decided to take the pen into your own hands and continue the narrative from an entirely new perspective? Instead of focusing on what was lost or on the pain you experienced, you could shift your focus to the lessons learned, to the inner strength discovered in the process of overcoming suffering. One of the most transformative exercises to initiate such a process is visualization. You are invited to close your eyes and imagine the person who once caused you pain standing before you, but this time not as an enemy or even as a source of ongoing suffering. Instead, visualize them as a gradually fading image whose presence steadily loses its intensity. You can imagine their figure dissolving, like a cloud slowly dissipating in the boundless sky. Then, in the liberated empty space, you are invited to plant a seed. This seed symbolizes your future. It serves as a powerful reminder of your inner capacity to grow and thrive, moving beyond what you have experienced. Observe this seed taking root and beginning to sprout, transforming into a mighty, vibrant tree full of life energy. With each passing day, this tree will stand as an unshakable testament to your ability to move forward, becoming wiser and significantly more resilient. Rewriting your personal narrative does not mean diminishing the pain that was experienced. Instead, it implies redefining its true meaning. Instead of viewing a particular chapter as something that completely defines your entire existence, you can choose to see it as a pivotal moment that served as a catalyst for your transformation. Perhaps certain relationships taught him invaluable lessons about his own boundaries, what he truly deserves, or demonstrated his remarkable ability to endure and successfully overcome challenges. When one reevaluates their past in this manner, its emotional weight gradually diminishes. This experience no longer remains a bleeding wound, but transforms into a scar that tells a story of unparalleled resilience. In this context, forgetting isn't about erasing what happened from memory, but about releasing the emotional burden tied to it. It means allowing the past to remain where it belongs, as a significant chapter in life's journey that helped shape the person one is today. By letting go of the old, an individual creates space for new beginnings, for building healthier relationships, and for developing a deeper, more authentic connection with themselves. It's not about ignoring the past, but about consciously choosing how one wishes to remember it, for ultimately, one possesses the power to decide what place this experience will occupy in their life. This is their moment of transformation, their unique opportunity to write a new chapter where pain no longer defines them, but serves as a solid foundation for something far more significant. Thus, the question for each person becomes, what story about their life do they wish to tell from this moment forward? After all, remembering itself isn't the problem. What truly matters is how one chooses to remember, and most importantly, how they choose to move forward. Are they ready to close this chapter and begin creating a narrative that is freer, more inspiring, and truly their own? Forgetting someone who caused pain isn't just a matter of time. It's a profound journey of self-discovery and healing. As revealed, the path to releasing this heavy burden begins the moment one dares to turn inward, face their own vulnerabilities, reevaluate their past, and create a new interpretation of events that liberates rather than entraps them. It's not about erasing past experiences, but transforming them into an unshakable foundation for personal growth that strengthens identity and propels one forward. Now the reader is invited to reflect deeply. What part of their shadow aspects do they recognize in relationships that continue to cause suffering? What unaddressed feelings or cyclical patterns do these relationships reveal to them? It's worth taking the time not only to acknowledge what happened, but also to ponder the valuable lessons that can be drawn from it. Every experience, whether painful or inspiring, carries a lesson, an encoded meaning that, if uncovered, has the power to shift one's perspective and fortify their soul. If the reader feels comfortable, the author invites them to share their reflections in the comments. One's story, their experience, can serve as a guiding light for someone else going through similar trials. Never underestimate the impact that words and reflections can have on others. Sometimes, insights forged in the crucible of hardship are precisely what someone else needs to find their own path to progress. It's important to remember that everyone walks this path of self-discovery and healing together. Perhaps one feels that the pain they carry today is bottomless, as if it will never disappear, as if its weight will always burden their heart. But if they dare to turn inward, if they take the time to truly delve into the most hidden corners of their being, they will find the secret of liberation. They will realize that within them lies an inexhaustible source of power, the strength to heal, to be reborn, and to become stronger than before. Every step taken toward self-awareness, every moment of introspection, and every small decision to release what no longer serves them is a movement toward a more authentic and fulfilling existence. Healing is not forgetting, it is transformation. It is turning suffering into profound insights and converting them into a driving force for individual development. Forgetting is not an end, rather, it is the beginning of a new journey, a path of metamorphosis that leads to clarity of awareness, growth, and unwavering inner